Hi everybody, this is Bastiaan, and today we're going to look at how we can create holes in our opponent defenses and how to exploit them. So in order to demonstrate, we're going to look at a simple game I played a while back. So I'm white. I play e4, e6, and I play e5, the Steinitz move. And this move violates a few opening principles, where I move a pawn twice in the opening, so I'm wasting tempo. Also, the pawn is becoming overextended. What I get back in return is coverage of the f6 square, which prevents black from developing his knight immediately to f6. And black plays d6. So black is attacking the overextended pawn, which has no defense. Now, there are two ways to continue. I can either exchange the pawn or enforce the pawn. So if I were to exchange, let's say pawn takes pawn, then bishop takes pawn, we can see that black has a pawn and a piece developed. White has nothing developed at all, and white is paying the price of moving pieces in the opening twice and then just exchanging them. So pawn takes pawn shouldn't be played. White should enforce the pawn. Let's see if white tries f4. Then black can play pawn takes pawn, pawn recaptures, and then queen h4 check, and white is in a lot of trouble because there's no longer any defense for the king, so the king is weakened too much. If g3 to protect the king, black can simply play queen to e4 check, and white will lose the rook. If white moves the king, he loses castling privileges, and after queen to e4 check, king is forced to f2, and bishop to c5 check. White is in an equally horrible position. So f4 to protect the pawn doesn't work, shouldn't be played. If white tries d4 instead, after pawn takes pawn recaptures, queen takes queen check, king recaptures. White is okay, but has lost castling privileges, and black is probably better. So again, a poor way to continue the Steinitz. White must use pieces to protect his e5 pawn. Knight to f3. Now, if pawn takes pawn, which was played, and knight recaptures, white no longer has a pawn, an advanced pawn against black, but he has an advanced knight, which isn't as easy to kick away. If say f6 to kick the knight, then it's white that who can attack black's king. Queen to h5 check, and if pawn blocks, knight takes pawn, attacking the rook, and of course the knight cannot be recaptured because then queen takes rook. So we can see that the advanced pawns and pieces aren't as easy to chase away. Black plays bishop to d6 instead, a developing move with tempo attacking the knight. And as was the case with the pawn, again, white must develop in order to protect the knight. If white tries f4 to protect the knight, bishop takes knight, pawn recaptures, we get more or less in the same situation. Queen h4 check, g3, queen e4 check. There's a very small difference here. Black's queen cannot take the rook. There's a small trap. If king to f2 and queen takes rook, white can now play bishop to b5 check and gain the queen, because there's no longer a knight blocking the way. Which may work in blitz or against a lower rated opponent. However, black can simply play queen takes pawn and he has a definite edge in the game. So f4 to protect the knight again cannot be played. If d4, we get the same problem as before. Bishop takes, pawn recaptures, queen takes queen with check, and white loses castling privileges. So d4 can't be played either. So after bishop to d6, again we must use pieces to protect the e5 knight. Queen to h5. Now white has two advanced pieces, and again it's not easy for black to chase them away. So if say knight to f6 to chase away the queen, simply queen takes pawn on f7 is made. So that doesn't work. If bishop takes knight, queen takes bishop, white immediately has an attack on g7, and black has lost the bishop pair, which should give an edge for white. Probably knight to f6, two bishops against one. So exchanging is possible, but this should give white an edge. Black instead plays g6, again trying to chase away the overextended pieces on e5 and h5. But now black has created holes in his defense on f6 and h6, and in this game we will see how to exploit both of these holes. Now when black plays the g6 move and he has his bishop on f8, typically the bishop will move to g7, shattering the bishop, and the bishop will cover the defense of h6 and f6. But now with the bishop on d6, this is no longer an immediate possibility. So pawn to g6, queen retreats to e2, again covering the knight. Black plays knight to e7, so black is getting ready to castle. d4, knight to c6, attacking the pawn, and c3. c3 not only supports d4, but it also locks this knight out of the game. And of course the knights cannot be exchanged with knight take knight, because if knight take knight is played, pawn recaptures, black will lose his bishop. If he retreats to the only available square, bishop c5, then queen b5, check, will win the bishop. So the knight recapture cannot be played. Black castles instead. And now I want to develop the bishop to g5, pinning the knight, after which I can play knight take knight. Knight can no longer be recaptured with the other knight, and perhaps black will have to double his pawns. However, I cannot play knight to g5, I mean bishop to g5, simply because black can play pawn to f6, attacking both minor pieces, also blocking the pin with the pawn. So now we get our first exploit. I play bishop to h6 instead, chasing away the rook that is defending the pawn. Rook moves to e8, and now I can fall back on g5, pinning the knight. Black plays knight take knight. I recapture, attacking the bishop, so there's no longer a possibility to double the pawns. And bishop goes to the only available square on c5. Notice there's no longer a possibility of check to grab a free bishop, because black has castled. So I play knight to d2 instead. And white's next move is very obvious. Knight to e4, attacking the bishop that has no protection. After which, the bishop that has few escape squares must fall back to b6, or even worse, he can play a move like b6, which will lose the bishop pair and double the pawns. Black plays bishop to b6 immediately, realizing knight to e4 is coming up. So I play knight to e4. And now we can see the knight is targeting the second hole on f6. And there's not much black can do against it. Black tries a counterattack with h6. h6 offers up the pawn, but it is used to displace the bishop, because if bishop takes pawn, or the bishop retreats, let's say bishop takes pawn, black can now play knight to d5, which will open up the diagonal for the queen on d8, and also cover the f6 square. So then black will have found a defense for the hole on f6. I play knight to f6 check, king to g7, knight to h5 check. Black recaptures the knight because of the check. Bishop to f6 check. King goes to f8, and we can already notice the king is being locked in. Also, these two pawns are weak and unprotected, and I have a queen looking to move in. Rook to d1, an in-between move. So black plays bishop to d7 to block the threat on the queen. And now queen takes pawn on h5. So I'm threatening queen takes pawn, check, queen g7 mate. And there's no real way for black to stop this. Black tries knight to f5 to protect the pawn, but this creates an attack on his own queen on d8. So I could take the queen, but I just go for the mate, g4, attack the knight, and after the knight I get an immediate mate. Black moves the queen, pawn takes knight, and there's no move left for black. Bishop to c6, queen takes pawn check, king g8, and queen g7 mate. So that's how we create and exploit holes in our opponent's defense. So I hope you enjoyed watching this game using the Steinitz attack. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.